Very, very important topic in America today. That topic is inequality. Madam Speaker, Justice Louis Brandeis once famously said, "In this country, we can either have democracy or we can have the concentration of wealth in the hands of a very few, but we can't have both." Unfortunately, right now in this country, we are at historic levels of inequality. A handful of families control more wealth than the bottom 50% of Americans, 160 million Americans. 40% of the lower income Americans make $30,000 a year. The top 1% in income, not wealth, but in income, earn over $7 million a year, while the other 99% earn on an average of $54,000 a year. We cannot have this level of inequality. President Abraham Lincoln famously said that labor and capital must always be balanced in America to have democracy. And he said if capital ever had the control over labor, democracy would cease to exist. From the pearls of wisdom of people like Lincoln and Brandeis, we are warned again today that we have to have countervailing institutions, as John Galbraith said, between labor and capital. This is in the best interest of everyone, including those who are making and reaping exorbitant benefit from the current inequality. But most importantly, as Brandeis said, you cannot have democracy with the current situation of inequality. Not only is this inequality wrong, but its consequences in our everyday lives, like worse health outcomes, diseases of depression, behavioral health impacts, and economic insecurity. These public health instances are directly correlated to income inequality, as demonstrated by the landmark work, The Spirit Level, 10 years ago. The first resolution that is part of this rule expresses strong disapproval of the Trump administration's recent attempt to turn Medicaid into a block grant. Medicaid is our nation's promise to a group left behind by rampant inequality that will help provide basic services to protect their health and well-being, basic services. The Trump administration proposal doubles down on its cruel policies that put cost savings over life savings. The second bill provides disaster relief to Puerto Rico. This is a community that has been devastated repeatedly by disasters, exposing the inequality not only in Puerto Rico, but between this administration's treatment of a territory versus a state. Puerto Rico needs our help. Without it, roads will remain unpassable, schools will remain closed, and the poor will become poorer. And finally, we have the Protecting the Right to Organize, the PRO Act. President Eisenhower once said that only a fool would attempt to block a working man or woman, an American worker, from joining a labor union. President Eisenhower said this, a Republican president, much admired. And this was at a time where America had the largest expansion in our history and the world's expansion, growing at over 6% of GDP a year that everybody benefited from. One year was 13%. At that time, 1 in 3 American workers were in a labor union. By the time Ronald Reagan became president, 1 in 4 Americans was in a labor union. By the time President Reagan left office, 1 in 10 American workers were in a labor union. The balance between labor and capital is the essence of American democracy. It is unbalanced and risks our democracy at this moment. The ability for American workers to organize and have a voice in the outcomes not just of their work, but of their retirement and the benefit of their families and communities has been attacked since President Reagan was in office. Evidence is clear that the rise in inequality has coincided with the decline in union membership. By most estimates, declining unionization accounted for about 1/3 of the increase in inequality of which I speak in the 1980s and 90s. To address inequality, you have to include working people. You have to include their right to organize. Labor unions are universally recognized as providing major boosts to employees' wages and benefits. Sadly, the best evidence we have on this trend is by comparing union-dense states like the one I am proud to represent, California, to right-to-work states. In 1979, states with historically high levels of union membership, like in the Northeast and the Rust Belt, saw relatively low rates of income inequality. Just the opposite held true for right-to-work states. If you watch the data over the years since the 70s as states move as a group towards less union coverage, those same states have much worse inequality and poor performing GDP. Unions not only raise wages for workers they represent, but they also have been shown to moderate compensation for executives. On top of all the obvious benefits you think of that are associated with labor unions, like higher wages and safer workplaces, some of the others that come along with union membership also help address the inequities in our society. Union workers are more likely to receive paid leave, are up to 28% more likely to have employer-sponsored health insurance, and are up to 54% more likely to be enrolled in employer-sponsored pensions. Not only do workers have better access to pensions, but their employers contribute an average of 28% more towards those pensions than non-union employers. The PRO Act simply updates labor law. Labor laws that have been attacked for 30 years to ensure that workers in today's economy are able to create and join labor unions to receive the same kinds of protections they see in other sectors. Nothing more. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I expect we will hear a lot of misinformation, especially about the PRO Act, from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Make no mistake about it, Madam Speaker, these three bills will help restore to the people the administration repeatedly has tried to strip power from. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for California for